Welcome to Learn More. In the previous lesson, we learned about the meaning of psychology. We looked at the origin of psychology, and we also looked at why the definition of psychology is not generally acceptable by psychologists. So, before you go through this lesson, if you've not gone through the last lesson, I would advise you look for the last lesson in and try to get acquainted to it and understand it before you come to this lesson. Just go to our page on Facebook and you get the previous lesson there, the meaning of psychology. So in this lesson we are looking at the characteristics of psychology. So at the end of this lesson, the viewers should be able to state the characteristics of psychology, state the reason why psychology is a science, state the scientific process. So we just have three major objectives in this lesson. Number one is to look at the characteristics of psychology. We are also looking at the reasons why psychology is a science. Is psychology a science? And we also want to look at the scientific procedure. So like I said before, our topic is characteristics of psychology. The characteristics of psychology are major features that are associated with psychology. And they include, number one, some of the characteristics of psychology are: psychology is a science. Science like biology, like chemistry, like physics. We know science subjects like biology, chemistry, physics, and so on. So psychology is a science. It's not a social science, but is a science. Now, psychology involves the behavioral pattern of humans and animals. It involves the behavioral patterns of humans, of animal, how human behave, how animal behaves. Psychology is an organized body of knowledge obtained with the use of organized method of science. Psychology is an organized body of knowledge obtained with the use of organized body of science. So in psychology, we have it is a body of knowledge, and the body of knowledge, it is derived from an organized method of scientific procedure. So psychology follows the scientific procedure in carrying out its research. Psychology adopts scientific method to carry out its research. So the procedures that science use in carrying out the research, we have the scientific procedure. Psychology also adopts that same method in carrying out its research. Now, some approaches used in psychology which makes it scientific include: number one, observation; number two, documentation; number three, experimentation; number four, development of theories; number five, measuring; number six, analysis; and referencing. So these method that I listed now, they are the scientific procedure. This is how science carries out its research. So psychology also adopts that same method in carrying out its research. The same method that science is being also used in psychology in carrying out scientific research. So that is why psychology is a science. So psychology is a science because it adopts the scientific procedure, it adopts the scientific method in carrying out its research. So if you are asked, is psychology a science? Is it a social science? You can say yes, psychology is a science because it adopts the scientific procedures in carrying out its research. So that's one reason why that's one characteristic of psychology. Then the next characteristic of psychology is psychology studies human and animal behavior. Psychology studies the way human and animal mind works and how it influences their behavior. Why the human tends to understand better than other animals. Why are humans called higher animals? Why do human and animal also respond to stimulus in a different way? So psychology studies the human mind in generally. It studies the human mind and how it influences their behavior. how the human mind influences their behavior. It also studies the animal mind and how it influences their behavior. Then number 3, psychology is a discipline. Psychology is an organized body of knowledge consisting of subject matter which describes and explains animal behavior. Psychology is an organized body of knowledge consisting of subject matter which describes and explains human behavior. So, psychology is an organized body of knowledge. Psychology is a discipline on its own. We have so many disciplines, like we have medicine, we have accountancy, we have education technology, we have so many other disciplines in the academic field, and psychology now is a discipline on its own. It's a discipline on its own. So someone can go in and study psychology and come out to become a psychologist. A psychologist is someone that studies psychology and is ready to solve problems using psychology, using the knowledge that he or she has got in the field of psychology. So that person is called a psychologist. So now we are saying that psychology is an organized body of knowledge. It's consisting of subject matter. So when you go to study psychology, there are so many concepts you'll be studying in psychology. So psychology is an organized body of knowledge. There are so many subject matters in psychology that, well, as we go along in studying psychology, we understand. So psychology is a discipline and it has so many branches. It's a discipline and it has so many branches. Now, let's look at some of the branches of psychology. We have clinical psychology, we have educational psychology, we have developmental psychology, we have counseling psychology, we have social psychology, etc. We have so many other branches of psychology, but these ones are just listed for you to understand some of the branches of psychology. We'll soon get to the point where we'll look at the branches of psychology, but for now, let's look at just these 5 as the branches of psychology that are available, that we gave in this lesson. But there are so many other branches of psychology. Now, to explain the branches of psychology, I can say that the branches of psychology are the aspects of human life in which psychology directs its study. So we have clinical psychology, educational psychology, developmental psychology, we have counseling psychology, we have social psychology. So each of these field of life, each of this study of life, psychology directs its study on them. Psychology directs the theory that it has propounded on this field of life in solving their problems. For example, we have educational psychology. In educational psychology, the psychologist brings in solution to education. It brings in solution to education by the knowledge he or she has gotten by studying psychology. So what I'm saying in essence is that educational psychology is an aspect of psychology. It's an aspect of psychology that solves educational problem using psychological method. So we are using psychological method in solving some educational problems. So that is educational psychology. Okay, we'll get to there. Some days we'll get to educational psychology and we'll learn more about educational psychology. For now, we are still under the characteristics of psychology, and I've given you 3 characteristics of psychology. The 4th characteristics of psychology is psychology describes, predicts, and modifies human behavior. Psychology describes, it predicts, and it modifies human behavior. It describes human behavior, it predicts human behavior, it modifies human behavior. So psychology predicts human behavior. It we can say that there is a pattern of child growth. That child always grow from we have the conception, from conception, then when the mother delivers the child, we have the early childhood stage, we have the late childhood stage, we have the adolescent, and we have the adulthood, and so on. So we can predict, we can say, okay, we can predict human behavior that, okay, at birth the child would want to take more of breast milk. Then when it crawls, you know, it want to try and start adapting to the kind of food that the human takes. So you know, the kind of training you have to give to the child at that time. So we are trying to predict human behavior. We are trying to predict the behavior of that child at that particular time. We are trying to predict that, okay, this is the kind of learning that's going to be taken to develop the mental capacity of the child at this time. We are predicting that this child should have gone above this stage to this stage. Then from here he would grow older and he would understand some major things. You know, psychologists predicts human behavior. It predicts human behavior. For example, when you have mistakenly you were injected through a needle, you know, instantly at that point your body tends to understand that something has gone wrong, and you react. You can react and say, oh, I have a pain somewhere in my hand or somewhere. You know, this is trying to tell us that we are trying to predict human behavior. So I've given you the characteristics of psychology, and I said psychology describes, predicts, and modifies human behavior. I also said psychology is a discipline, and I said also that psychology studies human and animal behavior. And we also looked at psychology is a science, where I told you that there are some scientific procedure in carrying out scientific research, and psychology also adopts that same behavior in carrying out its research. So in summary, we have learned about the characteristics of psychology. We have seen why psychology is a science and if psychology is a science, and we also looked at the scientific procedure, and we know that psychology prescribes, psychology predicts and describes human behavior. So if you have question regarding what we have learned, you can drop your question on the chat box. You can send an email, and we'll try our possible best to reach out to your question. In the next lesson, we'll be learning about the branches of psychology. The branches of psychology. Don't forget, I gave you some branches of psychology as I was explaining the characteristics of psychology. I gave you at least like 3-4 branches of psychology, and I said we have counseling psychology, we have social psychology, and so on. So we'll be looking at the branches of psychology so that you could understand the branches of psychology in a very easy way. So in the next class, we are looking at the branches of psychology. See you in the next lesson.